My name is Leonard, but my grandkids call me Captain. I'm 67 years old, and for 40 years, I was the lighthouse for my family. I steadied the ship through every squall, every financial drought, every heartbreak. My son, Kendrick, called me his anchor. Last Tuesday, I was in my kitchen, folding a Hawaiian shirt into a suitcase for the family reunion cruise he'd begged me to join. My phone lit up with his name. I thought he was sending the boarding pass. Instead, he sent a verdict. 4 sentences that erased 4 decades. He wrote that I wasn't family enough to be in their vacation photos, that my old-fashioned ways would disrupt their vibe. For a day, I was adrift, hurt. Then I remembered something my own father, a true sea captain, taught me. Every vessel needs a blessing to sail true and a curse to sink. He wasn't talking about magic, he was talking about consequence. You see, Kendrick's down payment on that luxury suite, it came from a fund with my name on it, a fund with one very specific forgotten rule. And the idyllic weather window for their perfect vacation, it's curated by a company whose founder still answers my calls at 3 a.m. I possess more than just memories. I hold levers, quiet ones, dusty from disuse. I never dreamed I'd have to touch them. When their ship pulled out of port without me, they thought they'd left behind just an old man and his disappointment. They didn't realize they'd sailed directly into the silence I left behind. And now, the first clouds are gathering on their horizon. But before I tell you what I did, and what the first officer just reported back to me from that ship, I need to know where your loyalty lies. Where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments. Are you with the family you're born into, or the one you build through respect? This isn't a small question. Your answer might decide whose side you're on by the end of this story. To my steadfast crew of subscribers, you who understand that silence is the most powerful sound of all, your wisdom is my compass. Thank you. If you're new here and you believe some lines should never be crossed, do me a real favor. Like, subscribe, and hit that bell. You're not just joining a channel. You're signing the logbook of a story about to make landfall. And, trust me, you'll want to see which way the tide turns. Let me take you back 8 years. Back when my wife Miriam was still here, still the glue that held our fractured pieces together. Back when I believed blood was thicker than water, and love didn't come with receipts. Miriam died on a Thursday in March. Ovarian cancer. Stage 4 by the time we caught it. She had 6 months from diagnosis to funeral, and in that time, she made me promise 2 things. The first was simple. Take care of our boy. The second was harder. Don't let him forget what it means to stand on his own 2 feet. I kept the first promise. I'm not sure I understood the second one until it was too late. 3 weeks after we buried her, Kendrick showed up at my door with his wife Miranda and their 2 kids, Theo and Elizabeth. They were 4 and 6 then. Beautiful children with their grandmother's eyes. Kendrick's face was hollow, grief carved. He sat at my kitchen table, the same one where Miriam used to make Sunday pancakes, and he cried like I hadn't seen since he was a boy. "Dad," he said, "I don't know how to do this without her." Neither did I, but I was the father, the lighthouse. So I steadied myself and said what fathers say, "We'll figure it out together." That's when it started. Small at first. Could I help with the mortgage payment? Just this once. Miranda's dental work wasn't covered. The transmission on their van died. Theo needed speech therapy the insurance wouldn't touch. Every request came wrapped in genuine need, delivered with Kendrick's hand on my shoulder and tears in his eyes. I gave, and gave, and gave. By year 3, I'd drained Miriam's life insurance policy. $48,000, meant to cushion my retirement, gone into Kendrick's household like water into sand. By year 5, I'd pulled from my pension. By year 7, I'd taken a reverse mortgage on the house Miriam and I bought in 1983, the house where we raised Kendrick, where Miriam planted roses that still bloom every June, $173,000 over 6 years. I have the ledger. I kept every receipt, every bank transfer confirmation. Not because I was keeping score, at least that's what I told myself, but because some part of me, the part that spent 42 years as a civil engineer calculating load-bearing weights and structural integrity, knew that something wasn't adding up. See, Kendrick's accounting firm was doing well. Miranda had a remote job with decent pay. They weren't drowning. They were renovating. I saw the kitchen backsplash on Facebook. Italian tile, the new deck, the family trip to Aspen for Christmas. But I didn't say anything, because when you're a widower at 59, 60, 65, and your son is the only person who calls you dad anymore, you swallow questions that might push him away. I became an ATM with a heartbeat, a checkbook with legs, and the cruelest part? I was grateful for it, grateful that he needed me, grateful that I had something to give that kept me in his orbit, until the cruise. Kendrick called me in October, voice bright with manufactured enthusiasm. "Dad, I've got a surprise. Family reunion cruise, 7 days in the Caribbean. You, me, Miranda, the kids, like old times." There were no old times. We'd never taken a cruise. Miriam hated boats. But I said yes before he finished the sentence. "It's gonna cost about $4,000 per person," he said casually. "But I figured we could split it. You take care of yours and maybe help with the kids' share?" $12,000. I didn't have $12,000, but I had credit. I had the last untouched corner of my savings, the emergency fund Miriam called the lifeboat money. I said yes. For 3 months, I counted down. I bought swim trunks, sunscreen, a new camera. I imagined Theo and Ellisbeth running on the ship deck, calling for Captain Grandpa. I imagined sitting with Kendrick at sunset, finally having the conversations we'd stopped having years ago. Then came Tuesday. The text. "Dad, been thinking. This trip is really for the immediate family. Your old-fashioned ways and the whole captain thing. It's a bit much for the vacation vibe we're going for. Hope you understand. We'll send photos." I read it 17 times. I looked for the joke, the typo, the follow-up message saying his phone got hacked. Nothing came. I sat on my kitchen floor with my phone in my hand and my suitcase open on the counter, and I realized something that made my chest go tight. I'd been paying for my own exclusion, funding my son's life while he was erasing me from it. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and heard Miriam's voice, that second promise. Don't let him forget what it means to stand on his own 2 feet. I'd failed her. I'd turned our son into someone who measured his father's value in dollars and decided it wasn't enough. But I'm an engineer. Engineers don't just break when structures fail. We investigate. We trace the cracks back to their origin. And when we find the flaw, we recalculate the load. Wednesday morning, I made coffee and opened my laptop. Not to cry. Not to write an angry email I'd delete. I opened the one document Kendrick had never asked about, the Miriam Elizabeth Hargrove Memorial Fund. You see, when Miriam died, her older sister Lemuel, yes, a woman named Lemuel, their mother had interesting taste, set up something unusual. Lemuel was a maritime estate attorney, specialized in old shipping families, trusts that spanned generations. She knew how money could rot relationships if handled wrong, so she created a fund. $35,000, seeded from Miriam's small inheritance from her own parents. It was designed for educational and emergency support for Kendrick and his descendants. But it had one ironclad rule, written in legal language so dense that Kendrick's eyes glazed over when we read it together in the lawyer's office. The rule: any beneficiary who willfully excludes the fund administrator, Leonard Hargrove, from family gatherings of significance shall forfeit access for a period of no less than 12 months, pending administrator review. Lemuel had smiled when she wrote it. "Miriam told me to make sure Kendrick knows you're not just the bank, Leonard. You're the lighthouse. This fund doesn't work if you're left standing on the shore." Kendrick had laughed it off. Dad's not going anywhere. Why would I exclude him? That was 8 years ago. He'd forgotten. How do I know? Because the cruise deposit, the initial payment that locked in their luxury suite, came directly from that fund, $12,000. I'd approved it in September when Kendrick called, frantic about a time-sensitive deal. Dad, if we don't book now, we lose the spot. Can you float it? I'll pay you back. I didn't float it. I unlocked the fund. Because he said, we. He said, family reunion. He made me believe I'd be there. The fund had rules. But here's what Kendrick didn't know. The fund also had teeth. I called Lemuel at 7 a.m. Wednesday. She answered on the second ring, voice sharp despite the early hour. Leonard, I was wondering when you'd call. You knew. Kendrick's wife, Miranda, emailed my office last week asking about fund liquidity for upcoming expenses. I told her any withdrawal requires your signature. She thanked me and hung up. That's when I knew something was sideways. I told her about the text, the exclusion, the immediate family-only line. Lemuel went quiet. Then, he invoked the clause. The idiot actually invoked it. What do I do? What do you want to do, Leonard? I thought about Miriam, about the roses, about Theo calling me captain with his gap-toothed grin, about the $12,000 Kendrick spent booking a cruise I wasn't welcome on. I want him to understand, I said. I want him to feel what it's like when the anchor stops holding. Then we freeze it. The fund, all of it, per the clause. I'll file the paperwork today. He'll get a notice before the ship leaves port, but it'll be too late to cancel without losing the deposit. And here's the beautiful part. Their on-board account? It's linked to the fund for incidentals. The moment we freeze it, every margarita, every excursion, every room service order, it gets declined. That feels fair, just, long overdue? Lemuel's voice was steel. Leonard, my sister made me promise I'd protect you from your own generosity. This is me keeping that promise. I authorized it. One signature, one email. Done. But that wasn't enough, because I'm not just hurt. I'm angry. And anger, when you're 67 and alone, needs to be surgical. I made a second call. To a man named Carl. Not my brother, that comes later in this story, but Carl Waverly, CEO of Oceanic Weather Solutions. We served together in the Coast Guard Auxiliary 40 years ago. We pulled 3 people out of the Atlantic during a nor'easter in 1987. Carl went on to build a company that provides weather routing for luxury cruise lines. Leonard Hargrove, he said warmly. Talk to me. I told him the name of the ship, the dates, the route. Let me guess, Carl said. You want me to reroute them? No, I want you to tell me what's coming, and I want you to make sure the captain knows there's uncertainty in the forecast, the kind that requires extra caution, maybe some itinerary adjustments. Carl laughed. You know, I can't create storms, Leonard. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to be thorough in your reporting, to highlight the edge cases, the low-pressure systems that might develop, the kind of information that makes a cautious captain slow down, hold in port an extra day, cancel a snorkeling excursion. You want me to ruin their vacation. I want them to feel a fraction of the instability I've felt funding their comfort while being erased from their life. Silence. Then, their ship leaves Saturday. I'll make sure the weather briefing is comprehensive. No promises, but captains hate surprises. If I give them enough maybes, they'll play it safe. I thanked him, hung up, sat in the kitchen where Miriam used to make pancakes. The cruise was in 3 days. The fund was frozen. The weather was about to get complicated. And me? I was about to disappear. Not from life. From their easy access to my resources, my flexibility, my forgiveness. Kendrick thought he was leaving me behind. What he didn't realize was that I'd just cut the anchor loose, and his ship was about to drift into waters he couldn't navigate alone. But this isn't about revenge. Not really. It's about the second promise I made to Miriam. The one I didn't understand until my son told me I wasn't family enough. It's time Kendrick learned to stand on his own 2 feet, even if the sea gets rough. Saturday morning, 6:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I was standing on my deck with coffee, watching the sun break over the Atlantic when my phone buzzed. Not Kendrick, Miranda. The message was 3 words. We have problems. I didn't respond. I sipped my coffee. Waited. 30 seconds later, my phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. She called again, and again. On the 4th attempt, I answered. Leonard, thank God. Her voice was breathless, panicked in that way people get when money suddenly becomes real. The cruise line says there's an issue with our payment. They're saying the fund is frozen. Kendrick's at the terminal right now with the kids and they won't let us board until we settle the balance. What balance? I asked, though I knew exactly what balance. $8,000. They're saying the deposit cleared but the final payment bounced. Kendrick used the fund account number for the automatic charge and it's not working. Can you call Lemuel? Can you fix this? I let the silence stretch, long enough that I could hear Theo's voice in the background asking if they were going to miss the boat, long enough that Miranda's breathing changed from panic to something sharper. Realization, maybe, or fear. Miranda, I said slowly, did Kendrick tell you why I'm not on this cruise? Pause. He said you weren't feeling well, that you needed to rest. That's interesting, because what he told me was that I'm not family enough to be in your vacation photos, that my old-fashioned ways would disrupt your vibe. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of calculations. I could practically hear her rewinding conversations, looking for the exit. Leonard, I don't know what happened between you two, but the kids are here. They're excited. Elizabeth has been talking about swimming with dolphins for 3 months. Can we please deal with this later? Can you just unfreeze the account? I can't. What do you mean you can't? The fund has rules, Miranda. Rules that Kendrick agreed to when we set it up. One of those rules is very clear. If the administrator, that's me, is willfully excluded from significant family events, access is suspended. For 12 months. Minimum. I heard her breath catch. You're doing this on purpose. No. Kendrick did this on purpose when he decided I wasn't family enough. I'm just enforcing the terms he forgot existed. So what are we supposed to do? We can't afford $8,000 right now. We used our savings for the deposit. Then I guess you'll need to figure it out, like adults do, like I've been doing for 67 years without a safety net made of someone else's grief money. His kids are standing here, Leonard. My grandchildren, I corrected. The ones I've helped clothe, feed, and educate for years while being slowly erased from their lives. Tell me, Miranda, when's the last time you brought them to visit without asking for something? She had no answer. Or maybe she did, but the cruise ship horn blared in the background, long and low, the sound of departure, of last chances, of consequences arriving on schedule. I have to go, she said. Kendrick's calling me. She hung up. I stood on my deck and watched seagulls circle. My coffee had gone cold. I poured it into the hydrangeas Miriam planted and went inside. An hour later, Kendrick called. His voice was different. Lower, controlled in that dangerous way men get when they're trying not to explode. Dad, we need to talk. I'm listening. You froze the fund, on purpose, right before our cruise. I enforce the terms of the fund, the ones you agreed to, the ones you violated. I didn't violate anything. You told me I wasn't family enough to join you. The fund specifically states that excluding the administrator from significant family gatherings triggers a suspension. You didn't just violate it, Kendrick. You gift-wrapped the violation and texted it to me. This is insane. You're punishing your grandkids because your feelings got hurt? That's when something in me went cold. Colder than I've ever felt. Because he genuinely believed it. He genuinely thought this was about my ego, my sensitivity, my inability to handle rejection. Kendrick, in the last 6 years, I have given you $173,000. I have a spreadsheet. Every payment, every transfer, every emergency that somehow always landed in my lap. Do you want to know how much you've paid back? Silence. Zero. Not $1. Not one thank you card. Not one visit that didn't come with an invoice. And I never asked. Because you're my son. Because I loved being needed. But you didn't need me, did you? You needed my money. And the moment I had none to give to this specific vacation, I became old-fashioned, disruptive, not family enough. That's not. I'm not done. You're going to figure out how to pay that $8,000. You're going to board that ship or lose the deposit, I don't care which. But you're going to do it without me, without the fund, without the safety net I've been holding under you while you learn to take me for granted. And when you get back, we're going to have a very different conversation about what family actually means. I hung up. My hand was shaking. Not from anger. From something deeper. Relief, maybe. Or grief for who I'd been. The man who said yes to everything because no felt like abandonment. 20 minutes later, Miranda called again. Her voice was flat. Defeated. We're boarding. Kendrick maxed out 2 credit cards. We're on the ship. Good. You know what's funny? The kids asked where Captain Grandpa was. We told them you were sick. Elizabeth cried. She made Kendrick promise we'd FaceTime you from the boat. You should have seen his face. Miranda. No, you should hear this. We deserved this. I know we did. But those kids? They didn't. And you just taught them that love has conditions. She hung up before I could respond. Before I could tell her that's not what I taught them. I taught them that respect isn't optional. That presence matters. That you can't erase people from your life and still expect them to fund your dreams. But maybe she was right. Maybe I did teach them love has conditions. Or maybe I just finally enforced the ones that were always there, written in ink by a dying woman who knew her son better than I wanted to admit. The ship left port at 2 p.m. I know because Carl texted me a photo of it pulling away from the terminal, sleek and white against the gray dock. He added one line. Weather briefing sent. Captains aware of developing systems. Expect cautious routing. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired, old, like I'd just done something necessary and awful, the way a surgeon feels after amputating a limb to save a life. That night, I sat in Miriam's garden. The roses were still blooming. Late bloomers, holding on past their season. I touched one of the petals and it fell, brown at the edges, ready to let go. Did I do the right thing? I asked the empty air, the ghost of my wife, the universe that doesn't answer. The wind picked up. The roses swayed. And somewhere in the Atlantic, my son and his family were learning what it feels like when the anchor stops holding. Before I continue, if you love real stories told by real people who've lived long enough to know the truth, hit that subscribe button. It's free, and it helps more than you can imagine. Sunday, day 2 of the cruise. I woke up to 17 missed calls, 14 from Miranda's number, 3 from a number I didn't recognize. No calls from Kendrick. I made breakfast first. Eggs, toast, the routine Miriam taught me when she got too weak to cook. Don't let grief make you feral, she'd said. Keep the rituals. They're the scaffolding. At 9 a.m., I checked my voicemail. The first message was Miranda, 11:37 p.m., the night before. Leonard, I don't know if you can hear me. The reception is terrible. The ship turned around. We were supposed to dock in Nassau this morning, but the captain announced we're holding in international waters due to weather concerns. Some kind of tropical disturbance. Everyone's confused because it's sunny here, but the crew is saying it's a precaution. The kids are disappointed. Just wanted you to know. The second message was from the unknown number. A man's voice, clipped and professional. Mr. Hargrove, this is First Officer Denzel Morrison with Caribbean Luxury Lines. Carl Waverly provided your contact information as an emergency reference for the Hargrove party in Suite 742. I'm calling because there's been an incident involving your son, Kendrick. He's not injured, but there was an altercation with ship security regarding payment disputes. I'd like to discuss this with you at your earliest convenience. Please call back at—" I didn't call back. Not yet. Instead, I called Carl. "You've been busy," he said by way of greeting. "What happened?" "Your boy tried to use the frozen fund account for onboard purchases. When it declined, he told the purser there was a mistake, that his father was the administrator and would fix it. The purser contacted Lemuel's office per standard protocol. Lemuel's paralegal sent back a very formal letter explaining the fund's suspension. Kendrick apparently did not take it well. Define not well. He accused the cruise line of fraud, loudly, in front of approximately 75 guests at the captain's welcome reception. Security had to escort him back to his suite. No charges, but he's been flagged. Any further incidents and they'll remove him from the ship at the next port." I closed my eyes, pictured my son, the boy who used to build sandcastles with such care, such precision, unraveling in front of strangers because his safety net disappeared. "And the weather?" I asked. "Legitimate low-pressure system developing east of the Bahamas. Nothing dangerous, but enough uncertainty that the captain's playing it safe. They're burning fuel, holding position, waiting for clearer projections. Probably cost the cruise line an extra day's worth of operational expenses and some very angry passengers who are missing their port stops." "I didn't ask you to create this, Carl. You didn't have to. Weather's weather. I just made sure the captain had complete information. What he does with it is his call." But we both knew that wasn't entirely true. Carl had highlighted every possible risk, every edge case, every reason for caution. He'd turned a minor system into a question mark big enough to make a captain blink. "The first officer wants to talk to me," I said. "About payment disputes, Kendrick's behavior. Be careful, Leonard. You start solving his problems from shore, you undo everything you just did." He was right. But the image of Theo and Elizabeth stuck in a suite with their parents spiraling, missing the vacation they'd been promised. That image made my chest tight. I called First Officer Morrison at 10 a.m. "Mr. Hargrove, thank you for calling back. I want to be clear that your son is not in any legal trouble, but we do have concerns about the family's financial situation and its impact on their cruise experience." "I'm listening." "The onboard account linked to their suite has been declining since yesterday. They've attempted to charge meals, drinks, and excursion bookings to a fund account that appears to be frozen. Mr. Kendrick has been insistent that this is a technical error. However, we've received documentation from a legal office stating the freeze is intentional and bound by specific conditions." "That's correct. May I ask why you've chosen this particular moment to enforce these conditions?" The question caught me off guard, not because it was inappropriate, but because it was asked with genuine curiosity, not judgment. "Because my son told me I wasn't family enough to be on this cruise, and then he used family money his mother set aside with specific rules, to pay for it. He violated those rules. I'm enforcing them." Morrison was quiet for a moment. Then, "Mr. Hargrove, I've been with this cruise line for 19 years. I've seen every kind of family drama imaginable, but I'll tell you what I haven't seen. A man who enforces boundaries with this kind of precision. Most people just cut contact. Walk away. You're making your son feel the consequence while he's still close enough to understand it. Is that a compliment or a warning? It's an observation and a request. The children, Theo and Elizabeth, they're good kids. Confused, but good. They keep asking the youth coordinator if they can call their captain grandpa. I'm not asking you to unfreeze the fund, but I am asking if you'd be willing to take a call from them. It might help stabilize things in that suite." My throat went tight. "Did Kendrick ask you to call me?" "No, his wife did. She gave me your number. Said you're the only person who might be able to reach him right now. He's not speaking to her, not speaking to the kids, just sitting on the balcony staring at the ocean." I thought about the boy who called me his anchor. about the man who told me I was disruptive, about the grandchildren who still thought I was captain, who still believed I was coming. Tell Miranda I'll call at 7 p.m. ship time, but I'm not calling to fix this. I'm calling to talk to my grandchildren. What happens between Kendrick and me is between Kendrick and me. Understood. Thank you, Mr. Hargrove. He hung up. I sat in my kitchen holding the phone like a grenade. Because here's what Morrison didn't know, what nobody knew. I didn't want to be right. I didn't want to prove a point. I wanted my son to call me Dad without needing something. I wanted to be invited to the cruise because I mattered, not because I paid. I wanted to still be the lighthouse, but lighthouses don't chase ships. They stand firm. They warn. And if the ships don't heed the warning, they learn about rocks the hard way. At 6:55 p.m., I dialed the ship's communications line. Miranda answered on the first ring. Leonard, thank you. The kids are right here. Before you put them on, I need to say something. Okay. I'm not doing this to hurt them. I'm doing this because their father needs to remember that family isn't just DNA and vacation photos. It's showing up. It's respect. It's not treating people like ATMs. You want me to talk to the kids? I will, but I won't lie to them, and I won't pretend everything's fine. I know, she said quietly. I know it's not. There was something in her voice, something broken open, like maybe the cruise from hell was cracking more than just Kendrick's pride. Here's Elizabeth, she said. And then I heard it, the voice that still called me Captain, the voice that made everything both harder and clearer. Grandpa, are you feeling better? Mommy said you were too sick to come. Did you go to the doctor? I closed my eyes, took a breath, and chose my words like a man navigating by stars. Hi, sweetheart. I'm okay, but I need to tell you something true. Grandpa, are you feeling better? Mommy said you were too sick to come. Did you go to the doctor? I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Miriam used to quiz Kendrick on his multiplication tables, where we celebrated birthdays and worked through homework and learned that family happens in the ordinary moments. Now it was just me, a phone pressed to my ear, and a choice that would define what kind of man I was. Sweetheart, I need to tell you something true, I said carefully. I'm not sick. I'm home because your daddy told me I couldn't come on the cruise. Silence. Then, small and confused. Why? That's a good question. I've been asking myself the same thing. But here's what I know. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, big ones. And when they do, other grown-ups have to make hard choices about what to do next. But you're captain. Captain always comes on the boat. My chest cracked open. I know, honey, I wanted to. I packed my bag and everything. But your daddy decided this trip was just for some of the family, not all of it. That's not fair. No, I agreed. It's not. But fair and real are different things sometimes. Can I tell you what I learned from my own daddy, the real sea captain? Okay. He taught me that the most important job of a captain isn't steering the ship. It's making sure everyone on board knows they matter, that they're safe, that they belong. And when someone forgets that, when they leave people behind who should be with them, the sea has a way of reminding them. Is that why the boat stopped? Is that why we can't go to the beach? Out of the mouths of children. 7 years old, and she'd connected the dots faster than her father ever would. The boat stopped because the captain is being careful. There's weather coming, and being careful is what good captains do. They protect their crew, even when the crew doesn't understand why. I heard Theo's voice in the background. Is that Grandpa? Can I talk to him? One more thing, Elizabeth. I want you to know something very important. Are you listening? Yes. I love you and your brother more than all the oceans in the world. That doesn't change because I'm not on the boat. That doesn't change ever. You understand? I love you too, Captain. Her voice wobbled. Will you come next time? That depends on your daddy. But I'll always be here. Always. Even when I'm not where you can see me. Theo came on next, and I told him what he needed to hear. That boundaries matter. That love doesn't disappear. that he should take care of his sister. When he hung up, Miranda came back on the line. "Leonard." Her voice was raw. "Kendrick heard everything. He's in the bedroom. He's crying." "Good. He wants to talk to you. Not now, but when we dock, when he can think straight. He said," her voice broke, "he said he forgot you were a person, that somewhere along the way you just became the answer to problems, and he's sorry." I closed my eyes. "Miranda, I need to tell you something before you put him on. Something I discovered 3 days ago that changes everything." "What?" "The estate attorney helping Kendrick? The one planning for my incapacity? His name is Carl Brennan. He's the brother of Carl Waverly, my friend who's been feeding weather reports to your ship. They're brothers, and they've been working opposite sides of this situation because of something that happened 15 years ago. A grudge. A business deal. Kendrick didn't just betray me on his own. He was guided by someone with an axe to grind." Silence. Then, "Oh my God." "I found out this morning. Carl Brennan called me himself. Told me Kendrick approached him 6 months ago, claiming I was losing my mind. Carl believed him because his brother had poisoned him against me years ago. They've been building a case to take control of my assets, Miranda. Legal documents, medical justifications, everything. Kendrick doesn't know this, does he? About the brothers?" "No, but he's about to." Another voice in the background. Kendrick's, broken and hoarse. "Dad? Dad, is that you?" Miranda must have put me on speaker. "I'm here. I heard what you told the kids. I heard all of it. And His voice cracked. "I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know where to start." This was the moment. The fulcrum. I could lean into anger, let him drown in consequences, sail away from the wreckage, or I could throw a line. Not a rescue, just a line. The swimming would be up to him. "Kendrick, do you know why your mother set up that fund with the exclusion clause?" "No." "Because 2 weeks before she died, you came to the hospital and asked her if you'd be getting the house after I was gone. You asked her while she was connected to machines, barely able to breathe, if there was life insurance. She didn't tell you this, but she told me. She cried after you left. Not because she was angry, because she was scared. Scared she'd raise someone who measured love in assets." Silence. Complete silence. "That fund wasn't punishment, Kendrick. It was a test. She wanted to know if you'd ever choose me over money, if you'd ever see me as more than an inheritance. And last Tuesday, when you told me I wasn't family enough, you failed that test. Not in her eyes, she's gone, but in yours, and mine. Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm not done. Carl Brennan, your estate attorney, he's been planning to help you declare me incompetent, to take control of everything. But what you don't know is he's Carl Waverly's brother, the man who's been messing with your cruise weather. His brother has been messing with your legal strategy. They've been using you to settle a 15-year-old grudge against me. You're not just betraying me, son. You're being used." I heard something break. A glass, maybe. Or something inside him. "What do I do?" he whispered. "You fire Carl Brennan. Today. From the ship's phone. You cut that tie before it strangles both of us." Okay, yes. And then you come home. You sit in my kitchen. And you tell me, without excuses, without blame, why you decided I was disposable. And we go from there. I don't know where there is yet, but we start with truth. What about the fund? The fund stays frozen for the full 12 months. That's the rule. But I'll pay off your credit cards. Not because you deserve it. Because Theo and Elizabeth deserve a vacation without their parents drowning in panic. Consider it the last time I bail you out without conditions." "What conditions?" "You pay me back. $500 a month for the next 2 years. And every payment comes with a phone call. Not a text, a call, where you ask me how I am before you tell me what you need." He was crying now, fully. "I can do that. And one more thing. When Theo and Elizabeth are old enough, maybe 16, maybe 20, you tell them this story. All of it. The money, the text, the cruise, Everything. You tell them what you almost lost and why. You make sure they never make your mistakes. I will, I promise. Promises are wind, Kendrick. Show me through weather. I hung up before he could respond, before I could soften, before the part of me that's still his father could override the part that had to be something harder. If you're still listening right now, that means this story means something to you. So do me one favor. Pause for just 1 second and subscribe. One click keeps this channel alive and lets me keep sharing the stories nobody else is willing to tell. 3 weeks later, Kendrick showed up at my door. No warning. Just him, standing on the porch at 6 p.m. on a Thursday with a cashier's check for $8,000 and eyes that looked like they'd been through a storm. "This is from the credit cards," he said. "I'm paying you back, and I fired Carl Brennan from the ship. He tried to talk me out of it, told me you were manipulating me. I told him I knew about his brother, about the grudge, about everything." I took the check. "Come in." We sat at the kitchen table, the one where everything happens. He looked older, thinner, like he'd lost weight he couldn't afford to lose. "I need to tell you what really happened," he said. "Not just the text, not just the cruise, the whole thing, from the beginning." "I'm listening." And he told me. About how after Miriam died, he felt abandoned. How every time he saw me, he saw her absence. How asking for money became a way to keep me close without having to feel the grief. How Miranda started resenting me because I was always the answer, always the solution, and it made her feel like they couldn't stand on their own. How the cruise was supposed to be their chance to be a family without the shadow of debt, of obligation, of me. "But the shadow wasn't you," he said finally. "It was my shame. Every time you gave, I felt smaller, and instead of stopping, instead of just being your son, I pushed you away. I convinced myself you were the problem, that your old-fashioned ways were holding us back. But the truth is, I was holding myself back, using you as a crutch and then resenting the crutch for existing. I didn't interrupt, didn't correct, just listened. When I heard you talking to the kids," he continued, "when you told Elizabeth that I'd crossed a boundary, I realized something. You're not supposed to be my safety net anymore. You're supposed to be my dad, and I forgot the difference." "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now I show up, every Sunday, for dinner. No agenda, no requests, just us." Miranda agrees. "The kids miss you. We all do. And in 12 months, when the fund unfreezes, I'm not touching it. It goes to Theo and Elizabeth, for college, for their futures, not for me." I studied him, looked for the lie, the angle, the next ask, but all I saw was my son. Tired, humbled, real. "Okay," I said, "Sunday dinners, but you're cooking. I'm teaching you Miriam's recipes." He smiled, barely. "Deal." He stood to leave, then stopped at the door. "Dad, the Carl brothers, what happened with them?" Carl Waverly apologized. "We're okay. His brother, Carl Brennan, sent me a formal letter, withdrawing from any representation involving our family. Turns out when brothers realize they've been played against each other, they tend to close ranks. We all got used. The difference is, we all chose what to do about it." Kendrick nodded. "I'm sorry. For all of it. For the years. For the text. For forgetting you were more than just there. I know you are. Now prove it." He left. I stood in the doorway and watched him drive away, and for the first time in years I didn't feel like an anchor dragging behind a ship. I felt like a lighthouse, standing firm, warning of rocks, guiding home anyone willing to navigate by my light. 3 months later, Theo called me on a Tuesday after school. Not because Miranda made him, because he wanted to. "Captain, can you teach me to tie nautical knots? Dad said you're the best." I said yes. 2 weeks after that, Elizabeth video called me to show me a drawing she made. It was our family. Me, Kendrick, Miranda, her, and Theo. I was in the center, wearing a captain's hat, and underneath she'd written, "Captain Grandpa keeps us safe." I cried. Not sad tears, different ones. Kendrick's first payment arrived on the 1st of the month. $500 with a note. "How are you, Dad?" "Really?" I called him. We talked for an hour about nothing important. About weather. About Theo's science project. About Miranda's new job. About how the roses in Miriam's garden were finally blooming on time again. It wasn't perfect. Some Sundays he canceled. Some payments came late. Some conversations still had the old patterns lurking underneath like riptides. But it was real. And real is what I needed all along. I'm 67 years old. I'm captain to my grandchildren. I'm dad to a son who's learning to stand on his own feet. I'm a widower who still talks to roses and believes in the power of boundaries. And I'm the lighthouse that finally stopped chasing ships. Because lighthouses don't move, they stand, and they wait for the sailors to find their way home. If this story taught you something about family, about boundaries, about standing firm when it matters most, hit that subscribe button right now. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment. Have you ever had to set a boundary with someone you love? How did it change things? Your story matters. Let's talk about it. Because the truth is, we're all navigating by the same stars. Some of us are just learning which lights to follow. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, stand firm. The people who matter will find their way to your shore.